Louise quickly jumped off her own chair and tried to assuage bubblegum with the actual gummies that she liked to stock in her pocket for some reason. Kai, on the other end of the spectrum, jumped onto the table to save himself from the slowly spreading flood of sparkly water. And in fact, just as he'd found his footing on the table, a small rivulet reached the spot that he had been standing. I looked around once more and let the mess I made sink in. Well, it didn't quite reach the level of catastrophic my mom's kitchen had just weeks before, especially as Janine and Dad weren't there to get upset about it. Children, like us for example, were much more proficient at dealing with situations like this and didn't immediately lose every single nerve at the sight of a little tohuwabohu. Okay, I said, at least we won't get bored while we're waiting for Dad and Janine to come back. We very much weren't. The shards from the former bowl of cookies were easy to get rid of. The cookie crumbs themselves fell victim to a vacuum cleaner. Each of us knew how to contribute something valuable. I knew that Janine kept her vacuum in the broom closet. Kai knew how to push the plug into the electrical socket without causing a short-circuit reaction, and Louise, who occasionally helped her mother at home, knew how to do the actual vacuuming and basically took the brunt of the work. And Bubblegum, who seemed to have gotten over his own upset rather quickly, now with a mouth full of actual gummy snakes, sat on top of the vacuum and seemed to pretend it was a dragon that he was waging a vicious war on cookie crumbs on. My dad's wetted church service documents proved to be a little more of a challenge. But Louise, seemingly proficient in all sorts of household duties, knew a solution for that as well. We simply ironed the wet papers. And since my dad used a simple pen instead of ink for his documents, barely anything was left smudged or unreadable. We didn't even make much of a mess in Dad and Janine's various closets and shelves. We'd searched for the iron, and it would likely only require 2 hours of concentrated tidying up on the side of Janine, really maybe 3 hours at most. Bubblegum only cleaned out the entire trash can once, as we obviously couldn't watch over him while searching the entire house for an iron. He might have also used the butter that someone had left open on a second smaller kitchen table to cover each of his Playmobil figurines in a thin layer of grease, but at least he didn't make noteworthy messes. And really, we finished putting everything into order minutes before we heard my dad's car drive into the courtyard. We refilled the bottle with tap water and put it back on the table. And in place of the shattered bowl of Christmas cookies, we put another bowl and filled it with my dad's favorite candy. We'd just gone down into the hallway and put on our clothes when we heard Janine ring the doorbell to pick us up for church. Everything else went down without further complications. It nearly became obvious that we hadn't quite recovered from the exertion that had come with trying to clean up the kitchen. We occasionally confused our costumes and the corresponding animal sound. The sheep eared, and the ox baaed, and the donkey mooed. Luckily, no one other than us seemed to really notice. My dad's preaching for the day was almost bearable, and I only almost fell asleep twice. After church service that had been drawn out way too long and that had taken place in a church that was way too cold, Louise, Kai, and me stood at the exits, still in costumes, as my dad had promised. We held our little donation baskets and delighted over said baskets filling with many 5 euro notes, even though we occasionally had to take care they didn't float out of the already well-filled baskets. Sometimes we received a 10 or 20 euro note and we barely ever saw anything less than a 1 euro coin. After most people had already left, Kai, who just maybe for the first time in his life had heard the entire Christmas story, took the opportunity to ask me, "Let me reiterate, Christians actually believe that the baby in the crib is God himself? Yep, they do, I said. How does that even work? Asked Kai. One guy can't be somewhere in heaven and look upon the entire world and simultaneously be a little baby in a crib somewhere in the middle of the desert that can't even say mom or dad yet. Yeah, said Louise, Kai has a point. I've thought about that as well. I made just as the presumably last visitor went by and put something into my basket. He slipped on the ice in front of the church and switched to walking into the deep snow next to the paved pathway until he reached the staircase where either my dad or the verger had put a little more road salt. I'll try to explain the concept to you. I got a question for you. Surely you've been in class before, but mentally spent the entire time playing in your room, right? Sure, and confirmed both of them. Of course we have, but how's that related to Christmas? Easy, I said, and almost felt like my own father when he stood in front of the two people that usually visited church and held his sermons, only that I thought that my sermon was maybe a little bit better than my dad's. That way, you were in two different places at the same time, in class and in your room. Just like that, God can be in two different places at the same time as well. But it's obviously not the same, Kai added his thoughts, because I'm not actually physically in my room. No one who walks into the room would see me, while the shepherds and the three wise men could very much see baby Jesus. Yeah, that's right, I admitted. But someone who sees your dreamy, absent-minded face at school might suspect that you're actually in your room playing with your action figures. And also, the Bible says that God is much more powerful than you could ever be. In fact, he is all-powerful, so he could have easily been in heaven and at the same time become the Christ child here on earth, so he could send the Christmas message to us people.